Folks, Addy Ads here. Day 4, Thursday, week 2 of the trial. I'm here with independent reporter, journalist, New York litigator, Joe Nierman. Good Lawgic on YouTube, LAWGIC. Check him out. Follow him on Twitter. I retweet him as well. What do you think so far of the trial, sir? Unexpected event today as well with one of the attorneys being sick.
Yeah, it was a surprise. It was surprising to get a day off. We were expecting to get testimony from Annie Farmer, who was one of the victims. She's supposed to be the 4th victim to testify. It's curious to see what role Annie can possibly play with respect to convicting her, seeing as how the judge was commenting about the fact that since she was 16 at the time that the alleged incidents took place, and in New Mexico, the age of consent is 16. It's kind of curious to see exactly what, if any, impact that will have with respect to additional convictions beyond that which may have had sufficient testimony so far.
Yeah, and it seems kind of like they're kind of icing out Farmer a little bit. I got from a very good source that she was told to take off work 2 weeks ago. It's been 2 weeks. I heard she was supposed to appear by the end of the week. We still haven't heard from her, so I don't know if they're trying to cycle her out or something like that, or if that's even a card that they can play.
Well, it's up to the state. The United States gets to decide when she testifies. There's no potential benefit that I can realize as to why they would want to play mind games with her. So I would assume that it's really more of a scheduled thing than an intention for them to try and ice her, as you were saying.
Sure. I was talking to Mr. Lee of Inner City Press today, and we were just talking about the prosecution and some doubts that are creeping up about how they're doing. What do you think about the prosecution's performance so far?
So I think they've been fairly effective most of the time. I've been critical of a few of their mistakes here and there. A lot of people are suspicious that because James Comey's daughter Maureen is the one who's leading the defense, that this is something, it's going to be something that's an intentional sabotage or something to that effect. I have not seen that. As an attorney, I haven't seen that type of thing. I will say this, the over-redactions that she made when she submitted the flight report from David Rogers, the second pilot who was testifying, that to me was indicative of the fact that the one thing Maureen Comey cares about, aside from convicting Elaine, I do believe that she's earnestly doing her best to convict Elaine, is that she does not want any of the big names dropped. I think that's clear. In fact, I actually spoke with Bobby Sternheim, and was pressing her to try and get those names out, and I gave her an argument as to why it might potentially benefit her client, even though between you and me, I think that it's not going to do anything to help Elaine. But I know that defense attorneys tend to be grasping at anything that might chip away at all.
Right.
And I was basically making the point that if you're going to be grooming, one of those things about grooming is one of the elements of grooming that was laid out by Dr. Rocchio was lies and manipulation. So the point I made to Bobby is, well, at least you can sort of try and knock that off by saying it wasn't lies when they said we're associated with Bill Clinton or Donald Trump. Here's flight logs showing them on the planes. And that was my way of trying to induce her to do the public a favor, because what we all want is we want the names, especially of anyone who flew to the Virgin Islands. I don't really care about anyone who's borrowing Epstein's plane to go from Palm Beach to New Jersey. But anyone who's going to the Virgin Islands, especially if they're going more than once, for a sightseeing tour, my take on it is that they're planning on making use of the facilities as Epstein intended to use those facilities, which was obviously for very illicit and disgusting purposes. So I figured, look, Comey is definitely not going to put this information out. The only one who could put this information out and might have potential benefit from it is the defense team. But the reaction, even though she gave me a reaction like, oh, that's interesting, I'll mention it to the team, at the end of the day, it ended up that instead of asking a handful of questions of the second pilot, the way they asked of the first pilot, because in the first pilot, if you recall, with Larry Visosky, they actually asked him a couple of questions about whether he ever flew Clinton, whether he ever flew Trump. And all of the questions that Christian Everdell asked of the first pilot, he asked of the second pilot. The only part he cut out for the second pilot was questioning about big names like Clinton and Trump. So if anything, I think that my question to her, trying to ploy her into being more, expanding that scope even further, it seems as if, I don't know, maybe I spooked them and they said we're not even going to ask about that. That's the only thing I can take from it, because this is how close he was tailoring. This is how the questions were exactly the same. He was reading from the same notes. He even referred to David Rogers as Mr. Visosky at one point because it was the same exact questions. He just reprinted them and just said, okay, same questions, second pilot, same questions as first pilot. And the only section we didn't get was the section regarding regarding the big names like Clinton and Trump or Spacey or Chris Tucker or any of these people. So to me, I feel as if, I don't know, maybe, I don't know why it is that got cut out, and I do know that I did have that conversation with Bobby before he conducted his cross.
Yeah.
My goal was, I want the public has a right to know who the heck was actually engaging in this activity. And I didn't think it's really going to help Ghislaine at all, but I figured, you know what, defense attorneys will grab anything they think might help them, so maybe if I give them a motive, they'll throw it out there. Right. I still think that with respect to grooming, even lies, manipulation, deceit, we all saw throughout this trial how step by step, all 5 steps, including lies and manipulation, deceit, there's no way that Ghislaine can possibly slip past that. When they're bringing their witnesses up, what I expect the defense to bring forward is basically try to attack the memories of the victims.
Yes.
And say that because of time, because of drug use, because of alcohol, and all these conflicting statements, and because of they'll come up with these other theories that it's going to be like Psych 201 class. It's going to be like, well, there's a media bias theory, and there's the, you know, these different, all the different ramifications with each particular victim that could potentially affect their memory and make them non-credible. I think the corroborating evidence that has been put forward by the prosecution will hopefully be sufficient to rebut that, because there is a lot of corroborating evidence. We heard from Sean yesterday.
That was great.
His testimony literally mirrored everything Carolyn said. He was a boyfriend of Carolyn. Everything mirrored exactly what the story that she told on the stand. And I know that there's conflicts in her story throughout time. She's put forward her story in like 4 different venues, and they don't match up with each other in those 4 venues before she took the stand yesterday. And then yesterday, the story she told a couple days ago on the stand was slightly different from that. And that's the key story. And this is the important thing for the public to understand, that the key story is, what did the jury hear, and will they believe that story is accurate, not whatever she said about times and dates and incidents in some lawsuit in 2009. Right. So what they care about is, what we heard, was it accurate? And everything that Sean testified about completely corroborated the version of events that she provided on the stand the other day. So I think that sort of corroboration, the other forms of corroboration that we saw with respect to interlocking and all other elements to corroborate Jane's story, I feel that the case that the prosecution has put on is much stronger than what most of the public realizes. And I think I also think that if you don't watch the testimony, there's under 200 people who've watched this trial. Yeah. You and I are one of them. Yeah. Are 2
and even less that have shown up every single day. And this guy's the only litigator here, the only one.
Yeah. So if you're not watching the trial, you're just reading it, you get a completely different vibe. You can't understand how powerful the redirect was of Carolyn.
Tone, intonation.
When Carolyn was barking, and even when she was expressing confusion, but just her utter outrage about the fact that, you know, Ghislaine Maxwell ruined her life, and that she felt she could sort of sense that she got badgered on cross, and that maybe that's going to, you know, enable Ghislaine to slip away from any kind of real justice. And her frustration when she was being asked on redirect by Maureen Comey, you know, did Epstein touch you when you were 15? And she barks out crying, yes. And then she's asked by Maureen Comey, what year was that? And she's like, I don't know. Yeah. And then she's like, did she touch you at 14? Yes. What year was that? I don't know. And you like say, how do you not know? Yeah. How do you not know? Yeah. But the point is, Carolyn is not someone who's an enlightened person. She's someone who's had a terrible, miserable life, and that doesn't mean that Epstein should get, just because she gets confused, doesn't mean that someone who's, you know, rich and powerful should get away with abusing her. Right. And it was clear from her tone that she was clearly harmed by these people. Yeah. And when you're just reading a transcript, all you get is, I don't know. Yeah, you just get, I don't know. It just seems like you read it and you think, is she confused? You don't understand the outrage and tears that were coming forward there. And that's the sort of thing the jury could not miss it. I mean, it was gut-wrenching, but when you just read it on the paper, you can't get it. And that's why I think a lot of the public, the incidents like that happen many times during the course of the last week and a half. Mm-hmm. So I think that the public is a lot less confident about the likelihood of conviction than they probably should be. I'm not promising a conviction, but I think it's far more likely than many in the public probably believe it is. Okay, it's, you know. And look, we haven't heard the defense yet. And when you hear the defense, that certainly changes the scope of things. But I think the talk I hear is a lot of people thinking, yeah, there's no way we're getting a conviction here. And what I think that even after the defense puts on, I'll weigh in with that more after the defense closes,
right,
as to what I think likelihood of conviction is. But I think that the prosecution's case that they put up so far is a lot stronger than most people out there realize. And there's no way that they could realize because the transcripts don't reveal it.
Awesome. Great take there. Joe Nierman, again, on Twitter and YouTube. Good Logic. Again, the only litigator here doing independent reporting. One of very few people, along with myself, who've been here every single day. And on Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we're going to do a chat as well. And check that out. I'm going to post the links. We're going to share that out. Thank you so much, Mr. Nierman.
Make sure that you're following this guy because he is everywhere. Every time I come any room, viewing room, I don't know. It's like there's like 3 Addy ads. I'm like, do you have a twin brother? I don't know. He's everywhere. He's relentless. And yeah.
You,
so make sure that you're following him as closely.
Appreciate you, Mr. Nierman. Stay frosty, folks, and watch this space. Chat on Saturday, 7 p.m.
Oh, it's Good Lawgic, by the way. Good Lawgic.
Good Lawgic.
LAWGIC. That's my YouTube channel.
Subscribe to him on YouTube, folks. Stay frosty. We'll see everybody soon.
Sure.